The clock on the wall ticked down the seconds, each one heavier than the last. Charles Kingston, CEO of Apex Global, paced around his massive glass-walled office on the 50th floor. Outside, the skyline of New York stretched endlessly, but inside, everything felt like it was closing in. The air was thick with tension. The Chinese delegation, in 3 sleek black cars, was already at the building's entrance, ready to make history, or break it. The deal was set. A $200 million contract that would elevate Apex Global into the realm of the world's tech elite. But there was one problem. An unexpected one that threatened everything. The translator, the one person who could make or break this deal, had just called in sick. A family emergency, she claimed. Panic surged through Charles as he gripped the edges of his polished mahogany desk. "What do we do now?" he muttered, his voice tight with frustration. The clock was ticking, and in just 15 minutes, China's top business leaders would be seated in his boardroom, waiting to finalize a deal that could propel his company to new heights, or destroy it. "Charles, we've tried every translator in the city," Catherine, his assistant, said nervously, holding up her phone. "No one's available. The meeting's too big, and no one can show up on such short notice." Charles's mind raced. They couldn't use an app. That wasn't even an option. The Chinese took their business meetings seriously. One wrong word, one misstep, and it could all fall apart. His hand loosened his tie, beads of sweat starting to form on his brow. For 20 years, he'd worked to build Apex Global into what it was today. One bad meeting, one translation mistake, and it could all crumble. But then, in the far corner of the room, a voice interrupted. Soft, calm, but full of authority. "I can help." All eyes turned as Monica Hayes, the janitor, stood there with a cleaning cloth in her hand. She was 28, strikingly beautiful with an unassuming elegance. Her voice, though quiet, carried a weight of confidence that no one in the room could ignore. Charles's first thought was disbelief. A janitor? In the boardroom? But Monica spoke again, and this time, the certainty in her words made him pause. "I speak fluent Mandarin. I'll handle the translation." The room fell silent. Could she really do it? Could someone so invisible to the executive team have the skills to save this meeting and the company's future? Monica Hayes wasn't your typical janitor. At 28, she had a quiet strength that seemed to go unnoticed by most of the people in the towering office building where she worked. She was tall, with striking features that could have graced a magazine cover. Dark, soulful eyes, full lips, and a confidence that radiated from her every movement. But for the last 3 years, she'd been cleaning the executive floors of Apex Global, unnoticed, invisible. To the executives, Monica was just another face in the crowd, a janitor doing her job and nothing more. But what they didn't know was that Monica wasn't just mopping floors and emptying trash bins. She had a secret. Beneath her simple navy blue uniform, she carried the kind of education and knowledge that most of the company's top executives would envy. Monica had graduated from Howard University with a degree in Oriental linguistics, fluent in Mandarin, Cantonese, and even a bit of Taiwanese. But life had taken a different turn. Monica had dropped out of her promising career in academia to support her mother, who had fallen ill. Her mother's battle with diabetes had drained their finances, and someone had to step in to pay the bills. So Monica took a job, one that was far from her dream career, but a job that kept the family afloat. She worked tirelessly, moving through the corporate halls in silence, observing, listening, and learning. Over the years, Monica had learned more about the people she cleaned up after than anyone might have realized. She had overheard confidential meetings, absorbed the strategies of the company's biggest deals, and witnessed the flaws in the system. She'd even caught some of her co-workers, like Catherine, the assistant to Charles, making unethical decisions. She knew the company's dirty little secrets. Secrets they thought were hidden behind closed doors. But while she was invisible to them, Monica saw everything. She had spent years carefully observing how Apex Global operated, what its leaders were really like when they didn't think anyone was listening. And what she saw gave her an understanding of the company that no one else had. It wasn't just her ability to understand different languages or cultures that made her unique. It was her ability to read people, to understand them on a deeper level. Monica knew what made the executives tick, and more importantly, she knew what they were afraid of. So, when she stepped forward that day in the boardroom, offering her help in translating for the Chinese delegation, it wasn't out of desperation or a desire for attention. It was because she saw an opportunity to step out of the shadows and prove her worth, not just as a translator, but as someone who truly understood the business world from the inside out. But more than that, Monica saw something no one else could see, the chance to change the narrative of her own life. The seconds ticked by like hours as the sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway. Charles Kingston's fingers drummed nervously on his desk. He glanced at the clock again, then at the glass doors leading to the conference room, where the Chinese delegation would soon be seated, waiting. They'd been on time, as always. But he wasn't ready. No one was. And now Monica, the janitor, was standing there, offering a solution that seemed almost too good to be true. Charles could feel his heart rate quicken. The weight of the $200 million deal pressed on him like a ton of bricks. This was the deal that could elevate Apex Global into the ranks of the world's biggest tech players. This was the deal that could make or break his legacy. But now, there was a giant hole in the plan. The translator had cancelled, and time was running out. "Charles, this is crazy," Catherine said, shaking her head as she leaned against the doorframe. She had been his assistant for years and had seen him through hundreds of high-stakes situations, but nothing like this. "We can't seriously bring her in. She's just the janitor." Charles didn't look at her. His gaze was fixed on Monica, who stood at the far end of the room, waiting patiently. Her calm demeanor was the complete opposite of the panic in the air. Monica didn't seem nervous, didn't seem worried about the monumental stakes of the meeting. She just stood there, holding her cleaning cloth in one hand, her posture confident and steady. "Monica," Charles said, his voice low and tight, "are you sure you can handle this? This is a multi-million-dollar deal. One wrong word, one mistake, and—" "I understand," Monica interrupted, her voice calm and unwavering. "I've been around long enough to know how important this is. You won't regret it." There was a brief moment of silence as everyone in the room looked at each other. Charles could see Catherine's eyes narrowing in disbelief. He could hear her quick, dismissive intake of breath as she tried to process the situation. But he also saw something else, something in Monica's eyes. It wasn't just confidence. It was certainty. She wasn't here to play games. She wasn't here to try. She was here to make this work. Catherine shook her head, visibly frustrated. "Charles, you can't be serious. You really want to risk everything on this?" Her voice rose with each word, the disbelief seeping through. "She's just a janitor. Do you really think she can sit in a room full of top executives from China and pull this off?" Charles didn't respond right away. He felt the pressure mounting, but he couldn't ignore what Monica was offering. She was the only one who could help right now. No translator, no technology, no last-minute miracle could step in. There was only Monica. And for reasons he couldn't entirely explain, something in him knew that she was exactly what they needed. "Monica," he said, looking her directly in the eye, his tone suddenly more urgent. "We don't have much time. Can you be ready in 15 minutes? The delegation will be here any second, and I need someone who can not only translate but navigate this cultural minefield. The stakes are too high for any mistakes." Monica nodded once, then turned on her heel without hesitation. "I'll be ready." She walked out of the room, the click of her shoes echoing down the hallway. Catherine stared at Charles, disbelief still written all over her face. "This is insane. You're going to let her handle this? A cleaning lady is going to run a $200 million meeting." Charles didn't answer right away. He couldn't. His mind was racing, but he couldn't deny the small, almost imperceptible feeling of relief he felt when Monica spoke. There was something about her. She wasn't just some random employee. She was the only person in the room who understood the magnitude of the situation, and she wasn't running away from it. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "We don't have a choice, Catherine." The door to the office swung open again. Monica had returned, now dressed in a crisp black blouse and tailored pants. She had ditched her janitor's uniform, replaced by something more fitting for a business meeting. Her hair was neatly pulled back into an elegant bun, and she walked with a sense of purpose, her every movement calculated and confident. For the first time, Charles noticed her differently. She wasn't the janitor. She wasn't some background character in the corporate drama. She was someone who had something that he and the rest of the executives didn't. a calm, unshakable resolve in the face of impossible odds.
"Let's go," Monica said, her tone still calm, but now with an edge of authority.
"We don't have much time. They'll be expecting us." Charles nodded, still unsure but knowing there was no other option.
With Monica leading the way, they walked toward the conference room.
The clock ticked louder in his ears. 15 minutes. That's all they had.
And the pressure was mounting.
The conference room was pristine, a sleek, modern space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline of New York City. As the clock ticked closer to the hour, Charles Kingston stood at the head of the table, his mind racing. The tension in the room was palpable.
Catherine, the ever-doubtful assistant, stood by the door, her arms crossed, her face a mixture of disbelief and frustration.
Monica, now dressed in a sharp black blouse and tailored pants, stood quietly at the side, a stark contrast to the rest of the corporate elite in the room. Charles's mind raced through the possible outcomes. He had made a gamble, an enormous gamble, on a janitor who had never been a part of any of these high-stakes negotiations. Yet here she was, standing with calm assurance, waiting to step into a role no one expected her to take. He felt the weight of the $200 million deal pressing down on him with every passing second. There was no turning back. Minutes later, the doors opened, and the Chinese delegation filed in. They were impeccably dressed, dark suits and elegant dresses, exuding the kind of quiet authority that only those with years of experience could possess. Charles greeted them warmly, introducing himself and shaking hands with the leader of the delegation, Mr. Chen. The rest of the delegation nodded politely, but it was clear that they were expecting nothing less than a flawless presentation. Charles quickly made the formal introductions, omitting Monica's role as a janitor, instead introducing her as their international relations specialist for the Asian market. As the delegates took their seats, Monica stood at the side of the room, her posture straight, her demeanor calm. Charles could feel the eyes of the Chinese executives flicking toward her, their curiosity piqued. She wasn't wearing a suit like the others. She wasn't wearing the uniform of a high-ranking executive. But somehow, she seemed to hold her ground in the room, despite the obvious differences in status. It was as if she had a quiet power about her, a presence that demanded respect. The meeting began, and Charles and Mr. Chen started discussing the finer details of the contract. As the conversation moved from one complex topic to another, Monica stood there, not as an outsider, but as someone who truly understood the nuances of the deal. When the first question arose about cultural considerations in the contract, Charles was momentarily at a loss. He wasn't well versed in the subtleties of Chinese business culture. But before he could even speak, Monica stepped forward. "I believe the issue you're referring to is more than just contractual. It's about the relationship we're building," she said, her voice calm and measured, but carrying an unmistakable authority. The room fell silent. All eyes were on her. Monica didn't hesitate. She continued, "In Chinese culture, trust and face are everything. If we move too quickly without understanding the deeper implications of the terms, it could cause offense. We need to consider how each decision aligns with not just our goals, but also the values and expectations of our Chinese partners." Charles watched in awe as the room seemed to shift. The Chinese delegation's eyes softened. Their postures relaxed slightly. Mr. Chen gave a slight nod of approval.
"Exactly," Mr. Chen said, turning to Monica.
"That's precisely the kind of insight we value. You understand the intricacies of international business better than most." Monica smiled politely, but it was clear that her focus wasn't on seeking validation. She was there to do a job, and she was doing it with precision. With every word, every suggestion, she demonstrated a level of business acumen that was far beyond her role as a janitor. Her understanding of both American and Chinese business cultures gave her an edge that none of the executives in the room, including Charles, had anticipated. As the conversation deepened, Monica continued to offer valuable insights. She didn't just translate words, she translated meaning, intent, and the unspoken expectations that came with the deal. When the topic shifted to pricing and deliverables, Monica stepped in once more. "If I may," she began, "it's important that we approach the financial terms with flexibility. In Chinese business, there is often a sense of mutual concession, giving a little to gain more in the long run. If we approach this deal with a rigid stance, it might signal that we don't fully respect the partnership we're trying to build." The Chinese delegation seemed impressed. Mr. Chen looked at Monica for a long moment before turning to Charles. "You have a very talented team, Mr. Kingston," he said, a rare smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "We appreciate your approach, and we believe this partnership will bring great success for both of us." Charles stood there, stunned. Monica had done more than just translate. She had brought an understanding of international diplomacy that many business leaders never quite mastered. She wasn't just a translator, she was a negotiator, a strategist, and an expert in her own right. The meeting, which had once seemed destined for disaster, was now moving forward smoothly. The tension that had initially filled the room began to fade, replaced by a growing sense of trust and respect. As the meeting continued, Charles couldn't help but reflect on how wrong he had been to doubt Monica. He had underestimated her, assuming she was just a janitor. But she had proven herself to be the most valuable asset in the room. By the time the meeting ended, the deal was nearly complete. The Chinese delegation had agreed to the majority of the terms, and both sides left with a sense of mutual respect and understanding. As they stood to leave, Mr. Chen turned to Monica and offered her a bow of respect. "You are more than just a translator," Mr. Chen said with a smile. "You are someone who truly understands the art of business. We look forward to working with you in the future." Monica nodded graciously, her calm confidence never wavering. As she watched the delegation leave, she realized that this was just the beginning. This meeting wasn't just about closing a deal, it was about opening doors to new opportunities. And in that moment, Monica Hayes knew she had just stepped into a new world, one where her talents and her insights would no longer go unnoticed. The conference room was silent for a moment after the Chinese delegation left. The deal had been made. The $200 million contract was in the bag, and Apex Global was going to expand its influence into China in ways that Charles Kingston had only dreamed about. But as he stood there, watching the delegation exit, Charles couldn't shake the feeling that something profound had just happened. Something that had nothing to do with the deal itself. It was the way the room had shifted when Monica spoke. The way she had guided the conversation with a depth of insight he hadn't expected from someone in her position. As the last of the Chinese executives disappeared down the hallway, Charles turned to Monica, who was standing near the door, quietly observing the room. She hadn't made a scene, hadn't sought any attention. She had done her job and done it impeccably. But in that moment, Charles realized just how much he had underestimated her. "Monica," he said, his voice heavy with admiration, I don't know what to say. You were incredible in there. I've never seen a meeting go so smoothly." Monica gave him a small, measured smile. "Thank you, Charles. It's my job to make sure things go smoothly. That's what you hired me for, right?" Charles paused, momentarily stunned by her modesty. Here was a woman who had just handled a multi-million-dollar business deal with the finesse of a seasoned diplomat, and she was talking as though it were just another day at the office. He shook his head, a smile tugging at his lips. "You did more than that. You saved this company today, and I don't know how to thank you." Monica shrugged, her cool demeanor never faltering. "You don't need to thank me. It's just business." But Charles couldn't let it go. He knew deep down that this was more than just business. Monica had just demonstrated a rare combination of skills, linguistic mastery, cultural awareness, and strategic thinking, that was worth far more than anything he had anticipated. He had seen what she was capable of, and it was clear she deserved more than just a job as a janitor. "Monica," he said, his voice growing more serious, "I think it's time we had a conversation about your future here. You've proven yourself in ways I couldn't have imagined. I'm not sure what the next step looks like, but I know it's time for you to be recognized for what you bring to this company." Monica's brow furrowed slightly, but she remained silent, waiting for Charles to continue. "I don't think you should be working here as a janitor anymore. You're clearly capable of so much more," Charles said, his eyes locking with hers. "What do you say we find a more fitting position for you? Something where your talents can actually be used to their full potential." Monica felt a wave of conflicting emotions rush through her. She had been working at Apex Global for 3 years, silently absorbing everything she could about the company, its executives, and the way business was conducted. She had known from the very first day that she was capable of so much more, but she had never expected an opportunity like this to come. Not in her wildest dreams had she imagined that one day, her knowledge, her skills, would be recognized in this way. But as the weight of the situation settled on her, Monica realized something. It wasn't just the recognition she wanted, it was the chance to prove that she had more to offer. She had spent 3 years in the background, unnoticed, while the people around her got the opportunities and accolades. She had worked hard for this moment, and now that it was here, she wasn't going to let it slip away.
"I'm listening," Monica said, her voice steady, her eyes focused on Charles. Charles smiled, feeling a sense of relief wash over him.
He had expected her to be reluctant, to hesitate, but instead, there was a quiet confidence in her tone that told him everything he needed to know. Monica was ready. She was ready to step into the role she had always deserved, the role that would allow her to truly shine. "I want you to consider a position in our international relations department," Charles said, the words coming easily now. "We've been trying to expand our reach in Asia for a while, and we need someone who understands not just the business side of things, but the culture. You've got the language skills, you've got the cultural understanding, and you've got the strategic thinking. We need someone like you." Monica's heart skipped a beat. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the moment that would change everything.
She had dreamed of stepping out of the shadows and into the spotlight, but now, with the weight of the opportunity before her, she couldn't help but feel a sense of disbelief. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice a little softer now, a hint of vulnerability creeping in.
"I mean, this is a big step. I've never had a position like that before. Are you sure I'm the right person?" Charles looked at her with an intensity she had never seen before. "Monica, if you hadn't been the right person, this meeting would have fallen apart. You've proven yourself in ways that go beyond anything I could have imagined. I wouldn't be offering this if I didn't think you were more than capable." For the first time in years, Monica allowed herself to feel a rush of excitement. This wasn't just a promotion, it was a chance to take control of her own destiny, to show the world what she was truly capable of. It was the opportunity of a lifetime.
"I'll take it," Monica said, her voice filled with conviction.
"I'm ready." As Charles extended his hand to her, Monica realized that this was more than just a job offer. It was a recognition of her worth, of the years of hard work, the quiet determination, and the patience that had finally paid off. It was her chance to step into the future she had always known she could have. The next few weeks felt like a whirlwind for Monica. She transitioned from her old role as the janitor to a full-fledged member of the international relations team at Apex Global. The change was both exhilarating and overwhelming. Gone were the days of cleaning floors and quietly observing the world from the sidelines. Now, she was a key player in one of the most high-profile departments in the company. Her new office, a sleek, modern space with a view of the city skyline, was a far cry from the utility closets and storage rooms she had once worked in. It was surreal, almost impossible to believe that only a few weeks ago, she had been invisible to everyone in the company. Now, as she settled into her new role, she was faced with a new set of challenges. One she had never expected to face, but one she was ready for. Monica threw herself into her work. She led negotiations, strategized with executives, and worked tirelessly to build connections between Apex Global and companies in China, South Korea, and other parts of Asia. It wasn't just the language skills or her cultural understanding that made her successful. It was her deep knowledge of business strategy and her ability to see beyond the surface. Monica was no longer just a translator. She was a trusted advisor, a strategist who could help her company navigate the complexities of international markets. But with success came new pressures. The higher she climbed, the more she realized how much was expected of her. There were long hours, high stakes, and a constant stream of decisions that needed to be made. She found herself struggling to balance the demands of her new role with the responsibilities she had taken on for her mother, who was still battling diabetes. It was a tough juggling act, but Monica was determined. She had learned to face challenges head-on, and this was no different. As she sat in her office one evening, working late on a contract for a major deal with a Chinese tech giant, she reflected on how far she had come. She thought back to the days when she had felt invisible, when she had been relegated to the background of every meeting, ignored by everyone around her. She had always known she was capable of more, but there had been times when the weight of the world seemed too heavy, and the idea of stepping into the spotlight felt out of reach. But everything had changed the day she had stepped into that conference room. That moment, when she had offered to help translate and guided the meeting with a level of expertise no one had expected, had set the course for everything that followed. She had proven to herself that she was capable, not just of doing her job, but of excelling in it. She had taken control of her own narrative, and in doing so, she had opened doors to a future she had once only dreamed about. Monica had always been a silent observer. She had spent years watching the world around her, learning from the executives who came and went,
from the way business was done, and from the lessons she gleaned from the mistakes of others. But now, she realized that true power wasn't about being seen. It was about knowing when to step up and make your presence felt. It was about understanding the right moment to take control and trust in your abilities, even when the world around you might doubt you. Her journey had taught her something crucial. That sometimes, the most valuable thing you can do is wait for the right moment. Patience, she had learned, wasn't just about holding on through difficult times. It was about recognizing when an opportunity was about to present itself and being ready to seize it when it did. It was about learning to trust in yourself, even when others didn't. And perhaps the most important lesson she had learned was that true success wasn't measured by titles or the recognition of others. It wasn't about being the loudest voice in the room or the one with the most power. True success, she realized, came from within. It came from the quiet confidence of knowing that you had the skills, the wisdom, and the resilience to succeed, no matter where you started. Her transformation wasn't just about a new job, it was about a shift in how she saw herself. For years, she had seen herself as the invisible janitor, someone who was always in the background, never quite worthy of the attention or respect of the people around her. But now, she was a leader, someone whose opinions were sought after, whose decisions had real weight. She had earned her place at the table, and no one could take that from her. As Monica reflected on her journey, she realized that the most important thing wasn't the recognition she had earned or the deals she had closed. It was the way she had transformed her life through hard work, patience, and unwavering belief in herself. She had taken the long road, and while it hadn't always been easy, it had made her stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. That night, as she finally finished the contract and closed her laptop, Monica took a deep breath. She knew there would be more challenges ahead, more obstacles to overcome. But for the first time in her life, she was ready. She wasn't afraid of what came next because she knew that no matter what, she had the strength and the wisdom to handle it. Monica had discovered that the true measure of success wasn't about the title you held or the position you were in, it was about the journey you took to get there. And for the first time, she was proud of the journey she had walked. Months passed since Monica's promotion, and with each passing day, her role at Apex Global became more solidified. She had quickly proven herself to be an invaluable asset, her expertise in international relations bridging cultural gaps and opening doors to new markets. As the company expanded its reach into Asia, Monica was no longer just an employee. She was a force to be reckoned with. Her influence had grown in ways no one, not even Charles Kingston, had anticipated. She wasn't just handling contracts. She was shaping the company's international strategy, leading discussions with global partners, and helping design deals that would take Apex Global to new heights. Monica had transformed from the invisible janitor to the director of international relations, a position that had once seemed out of reach, now solidly hers. One afternoon, as Monica walked into the sleek, glass-walled boardroom for a meeting with a South Korean delegation, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. The walls that once held whispers and hushed conversations were now the space where she led negotiations, where her voice was the one that commanded attention. The room buzzed with energy as she entered. The South Korean delegation had arrived on time, their team of executives greeting her with warmth and respect. They had heard about her impressive work with the Chinese delegation and were eager to meet the woman behind the strategic moves that had changed Apex Global's fortunes. Monica had quickly gained a reputation as someone who knew how to navigate the complexities of international business with ease, all while respecting the cultural intricacies that mattered most to their partners. "Ms. Hayes, it's a pleasure to meet you," the lead negotiator from the South Korean team said, bowing slightly in respect. Monica smiled and offered a polite nod, her posture exuding the confidence of someone who had truly earned their place in the room. "Thank you, Mr. Kim. The pleasure is mine," Monica replied, her voice calm and authoritative, yet warm. She had mastered the art of balancing authority with humility, a skill that had become invaluable as she worked her way up the corporate ladder. As the meeting progressed, Monica led the discussion with ease, expertly guiding the conversation through complex points of negotiation. She had learned to listen more than speak, to understand what was left unsaid just as much as what was expressed. Her ability to read between the lines, to understand the subtle nuances of cultural expectations, gave her a distinct edge in international negotiations. The deal with the South Korean company was nearly finalized, and it was clear that Monica's involvement had been pivotal in making it happen. When the meeting concluded, the South Korean team expressed their enthusiasm for the partnership, shaking hands with Monica and the rest of the Apex team. As they left the room, Monica felt a quiet satisfaction. She had done it again. Another deal, another success.
But it wasn't just the business accomplishments that had changed. It was the way people treated her. The respect she had once only dreamed of was now freely given. Her colleagues, who had once overlooked her, now sought her advice, listened to her opinions, and valued her insight. Monica had earned her place at the table, not because of her position, but because of the way she had proven her worth, day in and day out. Later that week, Apex Global hosted a company-wide meeting to announce the company's quarterly results. The numbers were impressive. Revenue from international markets had grown exponentially, and much of that success was attributed to Monica's work. Charles Kingston stood before the entire company, beaming with pride as he spoke. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to take a moment to recognize someone who has played a pivotal role in our success over the last few months. Monica Hayes, our Director of International Relations, has transformed how we do business across borders. Without her, many of the strategic deals we've secured in Asia and beyond would not have been possible. Monica, your work has been nothing short of extraordinary." The room erupted in applause. Monica stood up, her heart swelling with pride as the eyes of her colleagues turned toward her. It wasn't just the recognition that mattered, it was the respect. The respect that came from being seen for who she truly was. Someone capable, intelligent, and more than just a janitor. As she made her way to the stage to accept the acknowledgement, Monica couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. She had once been invisible, a mere background player in a world that didn't notice her. But now, she was standing at the forefront, respected by her peers, admired by those who had once doubted her, and most importantly, confident in her own abilities. "I just want to say thank you," Monica began, her voice steady, her eyes scanning the room full of people who had once looked past her. "When I first started at this company, I never imagined I would be standing here today. But I also didn't imagine that all the hard work, the patience, and the dedication would eventually lead me to this moment. This success isn't just mine. It belongs to all of us, as a team. We've done incredible things, and I'm proud to be a part of this journey." Her words were met with another round of applause, but this time, it felt different. This was the applause of respect, of recognition, not just for her role in the company but for the person she had become. Monica had earned this moment, not through luck, but through years of hard work, self-belief, and a commitment to her own growth. As the meeting wrapped up, Monica walked back to her office, a sense of fulfillment settling over her. The world had once told her who she was supposed to be, had placed her in a box defined by what others saw. But now, she had broken free from that box. She had created her own path, one built on her abilities, her resilience, and her unwavering belief in herself. Looking out of her office window at the New York skyline, Monica felt a quiet sense of peace. She had done it. She had proven that true success wasn't about where you started, but about how far you were willing to go, and how much you believed in yourself along the way.